Good morning, members. A very, very warm welcome. It's Wednesday, 22nd of May. It's just gone 10 a.m. We're in Town Hall and in High Street predominantly. We've got a large number of physical presence this morning, which is excellent to see, and we've got quite a large number of people online too. So, first item on the business is setting apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation. I'll do that now, the remote participation piece. Tracy, over to yourself for the setting apologies.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Morning, members. We've got 11 members present in total, 6 members present in person at Annanadale Hall, being the Chair, the Vice Chair, Councillor Davis, Councillor Jameson, Councillor Mail, Councillor Wilson, and 5 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Karen Crothers, Councillor Dryborough, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Thompson, and Caitlin Walton, our member of the Scottish Youth Parliament for the Youth Council. And I've got 2 members not present at the start of the meeting, being Councillor McGregor and Naomi Scott, who is the Annandale North Youth Councillor, who will be hoping to join us soon, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. That's excellent. Members, just because we've got as many people online as well, just go through the quick good practice guidance. So the muting of microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Please, right, speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this also on your iPhone, iPad, or even raise your hand, catch my eye. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members, if that's possible. No materials should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. But if it is, we'll make sure it's read out. Our standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any members have to leave the meeting, please either leave the meeting, the Teams meeting I should say, for that period of time, or leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track of whether the meeting is correct. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide a reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow other members to follow. Everyone to follow actually. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required, or to propose an alternative recommendation to the recommendations that are thank you very much, Stuart. The recommendations that are contained within the report. Item number 3 is the minute of the previous meeting, 27th of March. That's here for approval. Members, we're comfortable enough to... Oh, sorry, we have got declarations of interest. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest is a first, and do have any declarations of interest is item number 2. Nope, take that as well. Item number 3 minute is here for approval. Can we see? I'd have to move that as a true record. Oh, Councillor Brodie, Richard?
Yeah, just statement of connection on item 9, the Ann Harbour, on Ann Harbour. A member of the Ann Harbour group intend to stay in the debate. Thank you.
Excellent. So statement of connection, item number 10, I think it is, or 9. So minute, we'll see that has been approved and moved. Item number 4 is Social Work Services Director at 6-month assessment of business performance. Members, so what I'm going to ask to do, so everyone will have read the report. I'll ask the report authors, I'll just double check who's online to cover this one again. Catherine Knight and Gail Guest is here on Teams. Is it Sarah McGarver? Sorry, so I just wanted to make sure we have a slight alteration to that, so I can see is now online. So is there anything you want to add or speak to the report before we start? Who's leading in particular? Is it a particular lead? Is it yourself, Sarah, when you're shaking your head, or is it yourself, Catherine?
I'm here for children and families, and Catherine's here for justice.
Excellent. Anybody want to speak to the report at all, or are you just happy to take questions?
Happy to take questions.
Good questions.
Right, excellent. Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
sir.
I'll open it up to members, and if that's the case, members. So obviously we're looking at 2.1 is to review the overall summary performance within the Chief Social Work Officer's business plan in the Annanadale and Eskdale area in particular. We're going through these systematically. 2, we've been asked to consider the additional area-based successes and developments as detailed in the key succession section of this report. And 3, we've been asked to consider any aspects of performance that should be referred back to the relevant future committee, I would think being social work in particular. So members, do we have any points in regards to this report at all? Nobody's coming in. We'll leave it at that then. Item number 5 is a 6-month assessment. 3rd September is for education.
Kerry, we went through the recommendations first.
I just went through them. Councillor Dryborough. That was me reading them one at a time.
You went to 2.1, you never done 2.2 or 2.3.
No, I did. I did. Listen back to the recording if you want. I'll go through it again if you want. So number 1 was to review the overall summary of the performance with the Chief Social Work Officer's business plan, Annanadale and Eskdale area. The second point was to consider the additional area-based success and developments as detailed in the key successes section of this report, paragraph 4.2, 4.3. And the third point was consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant future committee. Was there any points you want to pick up on that, Councillor Drybrett? I seen you raised it.
Nope.
No, thank you. No, thanks very much. And we'll continue on to item number 5 then, if nobody's coming in. So, members, it's the 6-monthly assessment, 1st April to 30th September last year. The Education, Learning, Quality and Curriculum Service Plan 23-24. This report is by the Executive Director, Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing. So, members, again, I can go through the recommendations, but first, have we got the report authors here? So it's yourselves, you're doing a dual role today, aren't you? That's right. So you've got this one and the next one. That's absolutely spot on. Right, okay, so if you've got anything you want to add, say, or even speak to the report, what was that?
Not much to add, thank you very much, Councillor, other than to say that I'm delighted to announce that at the moment I'm currently advertising for a nurture teacher who will be appointed to work in schools in the Annan and Lockerbie clusters.
Excellent, thanks for that. Councillor Jimison, George.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for coming along and thanks for the information. I've got a couple of things, and bear with me, and I have to hold my hand up if I'm waffling, because my excuse is I've got Asperger's, so if I carry on, shut me up. First thing is exclusions. It's a really tricky area, and it's something that parents will come to us about exclusions, and you'll both understand who have been practitioners that there's two sides to inclusion and exclusion. Is the staff and the children that are affected by if for want of a better description, the troubled youngster, and the looking after that troubled youngster. And it's getting that balance and looking at the respect, me and respect for all. The intentions of these are fantastic, but how, there's a 1A and 1B, how do we look after children that are excluded? Where do they go? Especially children in this area, how are they helped if they are excluded? And secondly, and I've had this from teachers and parents and children who are badly affected by disruption in the class. How do we balance those two highly important issues? The second question it really relates to, you don't have information on this, we don't have not measured in half years. That's in terms of performance at Curriculum for Excellence and SQA. My concern is we're not essentially closing the attainment gap. And it's not for the lack of effort, and it's not for the lack of Scottish Government initiatives, but we're not closing it. And if I'm homing in on Annanadale and Eskdale, there's not a lot. We can be guided by the general trends, but what's happening in Annanadale and Eskdale in the particular schools at primary and secondary. Where we do have information from tests, the Times Educational Supplement suggests that 3 of the 4 secondary schools in Annanadale and Eskdale are in the bottom third in the country in terms of performance over the senior phase. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. It's very, very complex. But what I would like to ask in terms of Annanadale and Eskdale, Moffat Academy, 65% of their children get 5 hires. In the senior phase, that's both years. At Annan, Lockerbie and Langham, it ranges from 26 to 30. So can we have a wee look at how we can identify the barriers to young people in these schools actually achieving more through SQA? Because it is only the academic side, but we use academic very loosely, but a lot of these subject choices are technical as well. So it's how we can, in Annandale and Eskdale, identify where we can support our schools and our school staff and the children to achieve better results, if you like, better outcomes. I know that's a big question, but I think it's worthy of, I will be asking at the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, how do we, parental choice allows you to send your child anywhere you want to. It's, a parent in Annan is highly unlikely to send their child to St Joseph's College or Moffat Academy. So why should we be accepting of the fact that our children in this area don't achieve as much as others? So that's a very complex question, but it's something I'll raise at the Dumfries and Galloway level as well. Because closing the attainment gap within a school, between schools in Dumfries and Galloway and schools in Dumfries and Galloway compared with the national outcomes, you know, we need to be looking at how we can support our schools and our staff to make some incremental improvement. So there is 2 questions in there. The first one was the balance between inclusion and exclusion, and the second was how can we help small town secondaries actually achieve better results, or if not, why not?
Thank you for raising those today, Councillor Jimson, and you're correct with it being a 6-monthly report. Some of these areas are not covered in the reporting. In your first question, you are very correct. There are 2 sides and very often 2 parties or perhaps more involved when a pupil is excluded. As far as our work around exclusions go, the purpose of an exclusion is for there to be a plan brought together around a child or to review the plan that is in place. While the child is excluded from school, there should be contact from the school, and we would ask that provision was made to provide the young person with some work to be doing while they are excluded from school. There is then a return to school meeting that the parents and any partners are involved in to identify the support and next steps that are in place for the young person on return to school. There is also support for other pupils who are involved. You know, you spoke about respect me, respect for all, but within that there is a requirement on schools to support the youngster, or sometimes you have to be very careful with the terminology you use, but perhaps the other person who is experiencing the bullying, perhaps from a perpetrator. It's about the support for them as well, and there is an expectation that support is in place and that is recorded as well. Sometimes there are disruptions in classes, and our teachers are highly skilled at mitigating these instances. There is also a recent document that's been pulled together following a short life working group to support staff members in these kind of situations, because we are aware that sometimes our pupils display behaviours that come as a surprise to us. You know, sometimes, you know, there are children with perhaps particular conditions or diagnoses. We know that there may perhaps be triggers, but there are always things that are unplanned for and unexpected. But there are now clear guidance and supports in place for our staff members as well who experience these kinds of episodes. In relation to closing the attainment gap, what we are looking at is there's a number of facets to that. So there is individual challenge to schools on their performance data in the totality, as well as for those children that are either in quintile 1 versus those in quintile 5, which is what we are asked to report on to the government through our stretch aims. But we also acknowledge that the poverty-related attainment gap is more than just a postcode at times as well. So we take into account the 6 family groups that are identified, and schools again are challenged, and they know their families and are able to identify where their attainment gap is within their school. And the challenge that comes from us is then, so what are the interventions that you are putting in place? Because just because you know, there is a group of children who have an attainment gap, how that gap is going to be closed will look different for those children. So for one child, it might be perhaps a specific aspect of language. For another pupil, it may be an aspect of numeracy. It could be well-being. Their barrier could be involvement, wider achievement, etc. So schools, through their pupil equity fund planning, are required to provide us with very detailed plans and then follow-up impact reports on the interventions that they are putting in place to support our youngsters to help close that poverty-related attainment gap. As far as senior phase performance is concerned, there's again 2 aspects to that. We have a data sharing group that we have formed this year as part of our framework for improvement, and within the data sharing group we have come to an agreement as to what data is shared between one school and another, and also areas of good practice, so that can be shared across our schools, because that is vital. And I'll touch on that when I perhaps move on to the GIRFEC Forum paper, because some of that work we want to spotlight and share across the authority. Key to a lot of this, though, is the curriculum offer. that is in place in our senior phase, and our senior phase group, along with the working group on timetable alignment, is absolutely looking at that curriculum offer to ensure that there is that widest range of opportunity and equity of opportunity, regardless of where the young person goes to school, whether it be through a digital offering, through a foundation apprenticeship, so that our young people have the opportunity to experience a wide range of curriculum choices that best meet their needs and give them the qualifications and experiences that they need to move into the right positive destinations. Our positive destination figures are very good, but again, it's about working with our local employers as well to know what is the need in our local community, because there is an understanding that, yes, for some of our young people, university and life away from Dumfries and Galloway, life away from Annandale and Eskdale is what they want. But we also know that for a lot of our young people, they want to remain in their home community. And so it's that important link with local work, so how we can further build our wider curriculum experiences and opportunities for them.
Sorry, I will be brief on this one because I know that the GIRFEC presentation is going to be touching on this as well. On positive destinations, yes, we have got a high percentage of children that go to positive destinations, but this is an old chestnut of mine. How good are these positive destinations? And I think it's a bit of incorrect presumption that children are not academic, that they should go to vocational rather than academic. It's much less binary than that. Getting Nat 5s is quite important to get you on the pathway even to modern apprenticeship, because the Nat 5s give you a wider skill set, etc., etc. So that I would just like to say that we mustn't label somebody that they're not going to university, they're not going to college, because sometimes the aspiration is because there's a lack of expectation that that child will go to college or university, and for me that's really dangerous, and I know it's very applicable to my village of Eastriggs. Very few children in Eastriggs even think about going away, and it's just because they're not aware of that opportunity. So I think we have to be careful, and I'm sure you are, that it's not binary, so we have to be very careful we don't pigeonhole children. But I'll leave it at that just now, Chair, because there'll be other things to come up with the GIRFEC.
No, thanks very much for that, George. And I would never ever try and curb your enthusiasm, George. I know you're a strong advocate right for preschool, primary, secondary and further education, so I would never ever try and curb that at all. I would always give you every chance to come in and ask the fullest of questions and get the fullest of answers. Councillor Stephen Thompson. Stephen, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just a couple of points on the performance indicators. Obviously, this relates to the period up to, I think it's September last year, so it is a wee bit, it's not as fresh as it could be, let's say. But one of the things, obviously one of the things we want locally is a bit more information on how well we're doing at reducing that poverty-related attainment gap. And I think we all would appreciate that it's important, and we often seek information about, what impact some of the PEF funding's having in particular schools, for example. But there's no indicator there at all, and I'm just sort of wondering if we could see if that's something we could refer back potentially, whether it's to education and learning, so we could actually, because there's no measurement indicator at all, despite how important we all might say it is, to say, well, how are we measuring any achievements towards reducing that attainment gap at a locality level. So that's an observation, and maybe helpfully, if there's any response to that, it'd be useful. And also if we could maybe ask for that information, because we do want to know that regularly. The other thing is about the curriculum offer, which I think was spoken about earlier, about that making sure that range of subjects and sort of opportunities was available as much as possible, with however we're going to align curriculums and provide digital offerings. But again, while there's maybe narrative about it, there's no indicator to say, yep, actually we're 80% towards offering a full curriculum across our schools, or we're doing really well at that, but there's a shortfall here. There's literally no hard information about that. So I suppose if there's any information about that today, that'd be useful. But if we could maybe request back to education and learning, whenever they're developing their business plan indicators, could we actually get that information? I'm sure it's measurable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. On your first one in relation to closing the poverty-related attainment gap, our performance between pupils in SIMD 1 and SIMD 10 is in SIMD 5 is contained within the Education and Learning Performance Report at an authority-wide level. I appreciate that that is not available at local level at the moment. Colleagues in other area committees have requested that we include next time the copies of the PEF impact reports that schools provide, and we can provide that for at local level for Annandale and Eskdale as well. In relation to curriculum offer, again, that is included in next year's service plan for schools, so that will be reported on at Education and Learning Committee.
Stephen?
Yeah, no, thank you, and that's good to know about the poverty-related attainment gap. I think at area committee, I think our perspective, our lens is like, well, what's happening locally? So it's really important we do get that data. In terms of the curriculum offer, again, is that going to be? Can that be broken down into area availability of subjects, if you like? Because that's going to change from year to year, depending on teachers and sort of staffing and all the rest of it as well. So it'd be good to know in year how well we're covering those subjects, because that reflects the opportunities available to local people and local children. So is there any more to come on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I'll certainly take that away and speak to our performance team to see if it's a possibility to bring that data to committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both for that. Any further speakers from what I can see at the moment? Nobody in Councillor Marshall. Sean, thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just in relation, I know that we haven't got the figures for, and I think George touched on this as well with regards to the positive destinations, but I mean, nationally in Scotland, and we recognise that, and we hear the debates in the Scottish Parliament every week about the failing education rates and standards in Scotland. And the one thing that we hear from the current Scottish Government is, oh, but we are improving on positive destinations. But I think it would be important to establish, if the indicators come to education, I think it has to kind of break down what are the different positive destinations, because I think a lot of us are confused as to what is a positive destination when someone leaves school. The other thing as well, and it might be included in the school exclusion rates, but I don't know if education are developing a KPI with regards to another alarming kind of situation in Scotland's education is violence to staff in schools. So I'm wondering if we're looking at developing some KPI along those lines.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Positive destinations at local level, so for Annandale and Eskdale, although they're not measured for half years, it will be included in our next 6-monthly report, because that will be an end-of-year performance report. So the positive destinations will be included in there, and I can do a breakdown for higher education, further education, employment, etc. In relation to exclusion rates and your question against violence against staff, certainly within the schools side of the service plan, that is not planned to be a KPI, but I can ask if it is going to be part of the school resources and people team.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Sean. So I still don't see any further speakers at this moment. If that's the case, I think at 2.1 we've been asked to review, if we can review 2.1, accept to review 2.1 and consider 2.2, we'll go back to the actions that have been asked for and try and get to a decision on about consider any aspects that will go back to the Education and Learning Committee. So Stephen, I'm going to ask you to come in, and Sean, I'll ask you to come in after that as well, because you asked for some stuff. I think you in particular, Stephen, asked for great guidance for you, Karen, and yourself, Tracy, in regards to what can be referred back and what can't. So Stephen, you first, please.
Thanks, Chair. So yeah, and I think this was to do with the poverty-related attainment gap and I suppose use of PEF. And I think there was a sort of assurance that that's been requested from a number of area committees, and that information can be broken down and provided locally, if I've picked that up right. But even just to record that we've asked for that, or that's an action that we'd expect to get that information would be helpful, if that's okay. And then also the curriculum offer, or how we indicate how well we're doing in terms of offering a full curriculum, if you like, across each locality, and where the challenges and opportunities might be for that would be useful as well. So, and I don't know, through yourself, Chair, how we keep track of the action tracker. I know that's maybe something that's come up at the Business Bureau, but that would be helpful as well, because we might, I don't know if it gets recorded in the minute or if you would just get an update or where that goes. I think that's still a wee bit of a mystery at times, but I'll leave that with you, Chair. Thanks.
No, so I'm going to bounce it right back to you, Stephen, and I'll tell you why, because you picked up on the same point I was picking up on as you spoke about actions, such like, so action tracker system that we have in place, which is a new learning point for me very recently, is that the actions that we pick up, say it was an action rather than decision, comes back through the chairs and vice chairs and isn't shared with the rest of the members of Dumfries and Galloway Council. I think that's a wee bit unfair, and it should be actually through the Business Management Bureau, then beyond that. So I would look to tie that down so explicit, we either capture it within the minutes so members can see it, then we'd want to see some form of action coming back, so it's reported back to the members of this committee, not the wider council, but because it's this committee is making that decision. But we'll come back to that again at the end, Tracy, just to pre-warn. So action trackers, that's my understanding that I've just been told very, very recently by the head of governance, that that's only for the chairs and vice chairs, wouldn't normally be shared with other members of the council. But I think Stephen's bring up a relevant point. So unless we put it explicit within recommendations at 2.3, it'll fall off and fall into long grass. We'll never see it again. And actually, we need to see that kind of information coming back. So Stephen, that's why I'm kicking it straight back to you. So we can actually make it so it's a complete referral straight back to Education Committee. They have to then consider it and come back to us with a clear decision. Stick it in the action tracker and get lined up in the long grass. We'll never see it again unless we actually make a clear decision here today that we have to come back in some kind of report so we understand how that action's been followed. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks. Is this like the way Barcelona play football, where it's tippy-tappy and we just pass it back and forward? This is really about, I mean, when I was joining the committee, I was looking at my emails, and there was an email that had come from an action from area committee to do with the A7 in Langham, Transport Scotland. And this was a committee action, and that had been recorded, and then we've received an email about that. Now, maybe there's a consistency issue, because I know from time to time we do get emails like that relate to an action from a committee, and this one was area committee. So clearly something does happen somewhere, but maybe it's a consistency issue because we wouldn't know any given day what actions were still being followed up. So I'm happy to propose that we recommend back to the centre and record those actions, so at least there's a way of keeping track of it, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you.
I think that's the correct method, Stephen. I would advocate that as well. I would have come up with that myself if you hadn't. Councillor Marshall, though, you had a particular point, and I think it was in regarding exclusion rates and further stuff. We'll capture that as well, and then we'll ask Tracy to sum up.
Yeah, no, I think the officer responded with 2 actions, and no doubt Tracy, as usual, will have picked those up, and I'm happy with that response.
I'll pass over to Tracy now. Do you see how she's caught that?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've captured Stephen's 2 comments, and then Councillor Marshall had requested the measurements, but Karen had advised that they would be included in the end of year performance breakdown for Annanadale and Eskdale rather than the 6-monthly one. So I think that one's
for positive destinations.
Positive destinations, sorry, yes. So that one was picked up, which I think Councillor Marshall was happy with that. And for the exclusion rates, there wasn't currently a KPI, but Karen was going to take that away as well. So I've got them recorded as actions, Chair. I know that the action tracker is shared with the chair and vice chairs, as you've been advised, Chair, but I certainly have no problem committing to circulating the Annanadale and Eskdale action tracker with the committee members for Annanadale and Eskdale prior to every committee meeting. If that's a request of members, it's available. I can pull an extract any time a member requests it, so I'm quite happy to pull that and circulate it and share it with members of this committee.
I think, Karen, you want to come in there, but that's absolutely spot on, Tracy.
Could I just confirm, please, that the request was whether or not there would be a KPI for instances of violence against staff, because we already have a KPI for exclusion rates?
Yeah, sorry, Karen, yeah, for the violence, and we've also got Councillor Thompson had also asked if there was a KPI available to measure the People Equity Fund, and I think you were going to check if that was going to be available locally.
There's not a KPI, but as I said, what I would do is I would include the PEF performance reports the PEF impact reports for individual schools at the end of year performance report.
Councillor Thompson, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks. And no, and I wouldn't expect there to be a PEF indicator as such, but it's more to do with the outcome that's been sought, is like to reduce the poverty-related attainment gap. So that, I would imagine, is measurable, because either it's being that attainment gap is narrowing, or it's not, and then that can be expressed. Otherwise, how would we know what effect anything was having? So I think it's more, is there, or is it possible to develop an indicator for that at an authority level, because it might not be one that's a return to the Scottish Government, as it were, or Education Scotland. So it's really just to explore that, because I don't know what the right way to do it is. It's just, is there a way that can meaningfully measure it at a locality level? Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly, we have our stretch aims, which measure the totality of D&G pupils in quintile 1 and quintile 5, and I can explore to see if the possibility of having that broken down into area level.
Perfect, thank you.
Lovely. So you've captured that as well, Tracy, yeah. Excellent. Councillor Jimison, George.
Just a comment on the terms of positive destinations. This was already raised with Jim Brown, I forget his title, but it's already been raised with Jim Brown to avoid duplication. It's really just to look at the locality, what's happening in the locality. But Jim did give assurance to the Education Committee that he would be looking into the more granular information on positive destinations.
Yes, and that's also included in the end-of-year performance report at Annanadale and Eskdale level.
Excellent. We've come to a very comfortable consensus here, I think. So we'll move on to, thanks very much for your input there, everyone, that is. Item number 6. This is the Annan Cluster Gurfic Forum report approved by the Executive Director, Education Skills, Community Wellbeing. Just give me a wee second to get my notes into position. So I'm just reminding myself of exactly. So we've got the same. We've got Karen Ryan and Susan Spate here from Annan Academy as Deputy Head. So very warm welcome, as you've already been here. So it's just whether you've got anything to add or want to speak to the report at all. If not, we'll go straight into questions and answers.
Happy to go straight to questions. Thank you, Councillor.
Excellent, thank you very much. Councillor Jimison, George.
First of all, congratulations. Absolutely superb that you've taken the initiative to do that. I know that Annan Academy have been looking at this for a while and finding means to take things forward. I'm a big fan of pilots. I think they're an excellent opportunity to do a decent-sized scale look at things. A comment, first of all, a pilot's there to identify good practice and what needs to be improved. So I'm hopeful that the pilot will identify positives and negatives. One of the core parts of this whole operation is the school. Now, the forum seems to include everybody else and then adds on the school. The school should be the focus, probably, because that's where the young person is. The key person in the school, I would suggest, is the guidance teacher. And my question will relate to resources. The guidance teachers have, I know this through research, guidance teachers have got a very, very big caseload. And the terms of reference, which are a bit vague on guidance teaching, does suggest that a guidance teacher should be there for all children, not just kids that have a problem. They're there for all children. So the caseload is really high for the guidance teacher. It's music to my ears that we're including everybody in a holistic pack. My understanding is, and through personal experience, that's always been the case. So I'm thinking that this is trying to make that more effective, hopefully, because through my own experience, my own children, there was a group, but it didn't work very well because there was a lack of ownership. And part of the key to that was the guidance teacher. Now, guidance teachers don't really get any particular training. If we're short of educational psychologists, which we are, we're short of CAMS, which we are, social services are stretched, and all of these things are part of the group. So much comes back onto the guidance teacher, who's supported by a principal teacher, for example. None of these people have got mandatory training in guidance, in mental health, or anything like that. I know this for a fact because I've just done the research and my daughter's just done a dissertation on it, but it's quite convenient. But all the research suggests and all the feedback from schools, et cetera, is that guidance teachers neither have the time nor the training to fill the gaps that are left by other agencies or to do the jobs. So can we have some sort of reassurance that guidance teachers will have the resource and the support necessary to do that key fundamental job within the school? Because the children and the young people know the guidance teacher. They're in the school. Everybody else is outside. So the crux of my question is our guidance teachers well enough resourced? Do we have enough of them? And are they trained well enough to fill any gaps? Because if a child's waiting for a referral, they're still in the school. They're still under the responsibility of that guidance teacher. So it is building up. The pilot should identify these issues. Now, I'm really keen that we identify the fact that the focal point is in the school and that the guidance teacher maybe needs more help, needs more resources, needs more skills, etc. So, first of all, it's a great initiative, and I hope it identifies where we need to do better.
Thank you, Councillor Jimison. I'll just pick up your first point. So as far as the number of guidance teachers or pastoral support, pupil support, different schools use different terminologies. The number of teachers within the school is determined at school level. They're given an overall staffing budget, and from that they determine and assign and appoint staff members to meet the needs within their own school. Picking up on support and training, I'm pleased to say that our Curriculum Health and Wellbeing lead, Jessica Burnett, has recently been working with guidance teachers, pupil support teachers across Dumfries and Galloway, particularly to focus on 3.1 personalisation and support for all our youngsters. But I'll hand over now to Susan for perhaps a more personal response in relation to the paper.
Thank you, Councillor Jimison. The PT pupil support is central to this whole GIRFIC process. The school is central to it, and we are inviting all the partners to the meeting. So they are absolutely central because they are working with the young people and with the family. So please rest assured on that front that they are central to that. You're right, there are diminishing resources, which is why we come to the group to see how can we work more efficiently to make sure we're meeting the needs. As the paper says, it's the right support at the right time for the right young people. We're also using this that if we have any other young people who have a similar issue or concern, that we know the pathway that we can then go down. And what is really good, you talk about the good practice for this, is all our partners that are on board with it, that we have them attending these meetings regularly, and we put out information about each young person beforehand so that they can research their records, and then we can come together and we call it the team around the child to form a plan and a way forward for that. So that's where the good practice definitely comes in. The resources, as you've said, and we've mentioned the training, there's more and more training out there for our pupil support staff. They are not CAMS workers, they are not counsellors, they are not, and you're right that for a while they do feel that way sometimes, we will acknowledge that, but there's more training out there for them to help them in that role and to help them identify what else is out there for the young people. But the PTPS is central, and also what's central to this is the consent from the parent and the young person, that we make sure that consent is there to be sharing their information with all these partners. And sometimes the original route we thought we'd go down for support, somebody else comes in with a, have you thought about? And that is the strength of the GARFIC Forum as well. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. And as I said, the pilot should identify where we need, if we need more resources, that's our job. So we need this pilot to be hard-hitting, if you like, and if there is gaps there that you can't fill through efficiencies or better holistic arrangements, then you need to come back to us and say, because it's really, really important. Again, getting back to guidance teachers and class teachers, how important do you think it is for class teachers and guidance teachers to identify children that might not be easily identified? Because often it's the case that quiet children that seem to be doing okay are not doing okay, but they tend to get, and it goes back to the guidance teacher being there for all, so that young people are comfortable. I've got to see the guidance teacher, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm not feeling right. So I think, I mean, I think a pilot will uncover a lot of these things, but these are issues that parents come to me and they say, you know, my kid's too quiet, but he's not doing as well as he should be doing, or he's a bit anxious, he's a bit nervous, but these young people are less inclined to go to guidance teacher. My final question is the school got to take accountability of this? Because the difficulty with groups and agencies is who takes accountability, who has the agency to make sure that everything's followed through and that we get it right for every child.
Thank you. From the GARFIC Forum, a plan is put in place and the pupil support teacher, 9 times out of 10, is then leading that plan. So they will be the one. Occasionally there will be a lead professional, and that might not necessarily be the teacher, depending on the need. It could be that health then become the lead professional and they'd be in charge of making sure. And it's that accountability you talked at the start about what needs to improve. And it's about us going back and reviewing what has been the impact. What's been the impact from the young person? And that is something we need to get better at, is going back to the young person, the family, saying, here's where we were, here's where we are now. What has been the impact? Has it worked? There's no point continuing to do the same thing if it's not working.
Thanks, Councillor. If I could just come in as well. Relationships are key in all of this, and I think there is an acknowledgement as well that our young people form different relationships with different people, and it may not necessarily be perhaps their guidance or pupil support teacher is their first go-to. However, the majority of our young people do have a member of staff that they feel that they can trust and will go and speak to, and for a lot of our young people it's more than one member of staff, and there are clear procedures within our schools so that if any staff member, you know, and I'm talking janitors, dinner ladies, class teachers, learning assistants, if there is something that they observe or something that is shared with them for people, there are clear procedures and processes in schools that can be referred to the correct person so that the correct support can then be put in place.
And just to add to that, with the training that we're offering all staff, there's a lot of work we're doing around the promise and also neurodiversity. And what a lot of staff are finding is that while this might be for certain young people, they can see that the skills and strategies that should be employed to help support certain young people can work for a lot of our young people as well. And the nurture training that's coming along as well. So there's lots of training for all staff. In Annan Academy, I can only talk about Annan Academy, is they have their tutor that they see every day for 15 minutes as well. So they've got that one person that checks in with them. And we have processes in place and procedures that if somebody, a classroom teacher, thinks there's something that I need looked at there for that young person, we've got what's called an identification of concern form, that would then go into our support for learning or our pupil support staff to then delve a bit deeper and look and see what's happening.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really encouraging. I'm really keen to see how the pilot develops and then we can learn from experience. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There's also Councillor Archie Driver and Councillor Richard Brodie after that. Archie?
Yes, thanks, Chair. And, you know, a pilot's actually a good name for this, isn't it? Because the kind of pilots that I deal with in the armed forces have boundaries. And those boundaries, there are a floor that you can't go below, there's a speed that you can't go above, or there will be consequences for that. And whilst I do like this pilot, as George says, what I can't see in any of the discussions that are going on at the moment about children and young people and education is boundaries of which children should stay within. Because what I've found over many, many years working with cadet forces and things like that is if the children know their boundaries, they can stay within that, and they usually get a very positive outcome of any type of education that they get. So I'm just wondering where in all of this are the boundaries for children, because coming back to what Councillor Marshall said earlier on, we're seeing an increase in violence against teaching and teaching staff, and that's both in school and sometimes out of school. But what I don't see, and it's on the last page, are we there yet? I don't see any boundaries of which the young people have to stay within. So I'm wondering if you can help me with this one, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dryburgh. Every school has a form of behaviour policy. Some schools call it a positive relationships policy, but there is a form of behaviour policy, and it is, a lot of them are based on good practice from Respect Me and have been pulled together through Respect Me. But there is an expectation within all of our schools of a standard of behaviour. And schools are like all walks of life. There are always perhaps people who do not adhere to these expectations all of the time.
Actually, just before you come in, Susan, I wonder, just as a deputy head, would you have a view in regards to what Councillor Dryburgh just said there as well?
Yeah, just to say that the boundaries there are something that we're always reinforcing with our young people. Every assembly goes back to our school values. So we've got our school values, the 4 values there. Every assembly I do comes back to that. The tutors, the classroom teachers, they're on the wall. And the pupils have actually put the wording of what respect means in their words. So it's not our speak. It's gone out to the pupil voice to say, what does that look like in our school? What do we expect?
No, thanks very much for that extra. Karen? Yeah.
And it's just to follow up, and again, all schools have, values, aims, expectations, and as part of the restorative work that happens, very often these are referred to, and these expectations are again highlighted to the young people and reinforced.
No, sorry, Archie, for intervening there, but back to yourself.
No, I'm happy with that response, Chair. But I think I need to take a little bit of digging into this to make sure that I'm really happy with it, as opposed to just happy with a response from the report authors.
No, thank you. Thanks very much for that. I mean, it led me down a kind of different path, and it's levels of discipline that can be applied, but that's a completely different conversation, I think, not here for today. But Susan, yep.
Just say it's something that we visit regularly as a school, and it's about us working with all the partners, and that includes the parents, to make sure that everybody understands the values and what that looks like, to make sure that there's no misconception as to somebody falling below the standard. The parents don't get a surprise by it when we have to call them in and discuss that with them and their young person, and then come up with a wellbeing agreement which tackles all the different areas and the values that we have.
No, thanks very much for that reassurance as well. So we've got Councillor Brodie next. Richard.
Thanks, Chair. For some reason, this exciting project is really close to my heart. So I've just got a couple of questions. What stage is the pilot at now, and what tangible benefits are you seeing at the moment in Ann Academy and the cluster schools? And then the pilot, how will you decide, what do you want to have achieved, and how will you measure that success?
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. So the stage we're at just now is we're 18 months down the line, and we've learnt a lot from those 18 months about the makeup of who is in the group, and how we record our minutes from that, what our next agenda looks like. So there are changes that we're putting in place for the next 18 months, even it's down to the finer detail of setting our meeting times now for the whole year ahead, to make sure that everybody can be around the table, because that is vital, having all the partners around the table for that one. The benefits have been mixed for the young people. So again, we look at the team around the child, and we come back and look at what the outcomes have been. We need to actually work, though, on finding out that impact, as I said earlier, is actually measuring that impact using the different wellbeing scales that are out there. What do we hope to achieve? We'd hope to achieve that we're meeting the needs better of all our young people. And it's not just those with additional support needs, it's the hidden need that can often just suddenly arrive. And also, one thing that we've done recently, one of the benefits was, because it's a cluster, so we just actually had an extraordinary meeting for a family where there were 2 youngsters in the primary school and 1 in the secondary, and we then worked together within the cluster. rather than keep it as a separate primary or secondary issue, to work with the whole family, because we felt there was a need there. So there's definite benefits coming out of that that we wouldn't have seen previously.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So just going back to the history of this, because I haven't got anybody else lined up. I maybe have a few comments to make at the very end. This was Councillor Jimmerson's request, this particular report. Grateful for him to have requested that in the first place, and for yourselves to come along too. But George, I'll give you the last say in this. My thoughts round about the recommendations in particular, 2.2 says to note the achievements. I think it's possibly could add to that Annanadale and Eskdale Area Committee welcomes the achievements. But I just thought it's right, I'll give yourselves the last chance to speak on this, and then we'll come to a conclusion.
Thanks, Chair. No, I'm really encouraged that you've come to explain, because it's something that the area committees need to have a purpose. And as I sit in education, and Richard's the chair of education, it's really important to us that that Annanadale and Eskdale can benefit from focus on Annanadale and Eskdale, but equally that the rest of the region can learn from the successes and failings of Annanadale and Eskdale. And I've often said I'm quite close to education because of several things, but the important thing is that we get it right for every child. And it's easy to say, get it right for every child. It's much harder to actually do. But this pilot is actually identifying ways where we can help and where there's maybe lacking in resources. And resources is a big issue for all of us in the Bruce and Galloway, and there's so many different resources. But one of the fundamental things that we can do is give our kids a good start in life. And that means all children as far as possible. And it's really difficult because there's good kids, bad kids, indifferent kids, all the rest of it. But for me, this actually is a really important pilot. It's a piece of research that we can all learn from. And it may be that you come back and says, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but we need X, Y, and Z pounds. Or we need to refocus our teaching resources so we've got more in guidance and less somewhere else. So I think it's a really valuable pilot. And I think it's important that it raises the issues of the difficulties and potential solutions. So I better leave it there, or I'll start to move into my waffling.
That's fine. This is your chance to get your waffle out, George. That's what I'm saying. But Susan, yep.
Just one last thing there. You talked about the benefits. There's been no extra cost involved in this whole pilot that we've done there. And also, when we take a youngster to be discussed at this meeting, there's one referral form, and every partner around the table takes that one referral form. It's not after the meeting, the pupil support teacher has got 3 or 4 agencies to refer this young person to and has to go away and do all the paperwork for it. That one referral, and it's been agreed by all the partners that meeting is that referral for it. So it cuts down on the time. I think you were talking earlier about the time waiting to get some of these partners involved, and it's left with the pupil support teacher, but they take it there and then.
So won't take any more time. Do you still find it easy for children to come to you? Because sometimes they don't, and it comes to a situation where the parent doesn't know. In my own experience, yourself was involved with it, because I was on the parent council, etc., I knew who to speak to. But there's a lot of parents out there who might not know how to speak to, and they let it grumble on until it's a situation that's out of control. So how easy is it for a child or a parent actually to raise concerns?
Thank you for that question. Actually, we find parents are very, very good at raising their concerns with us. They know who they can contact within the school. And so we do. Very often as well, though, is we're noticing and the parent hasn't, and we're getting in touch with them to say, we've noticed this, have you noticed? This is what we'd like to do. So it is totally that partnership.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So I did think, again, I was interested in the resource, but it's not, but it is about better working, communication, again, interagency, I suppose, the relationships, how that's built, but that's all been covered anyway. So my thoughts about the recommendation was 2.1 is absolutely fine. I thought 2.2, George, looking at yourself, the Annanadale and Eskdale Area Committee welcome the achievements, but should there be a 2.3, and again come back to yourself, so this is a pilot, it's 18 months in, it's got to come to its fruition, but should we be asking for an update, end of pilot report to come back to this area committee for, so that would be a 2.3, is okay with that? There was an action, and Tracy's capturing that very well, I see, but it's an action, what I am going to ask, not for today discussion, but what understand how you feel about coming here and presenting this way today as well. This is different for us, different for you, but I think this is a great way of communicating, and it's actually, but we need that feedback, and we want that feedback as a committee. So again, thanks very much for coming today, giving us your time, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you. Thanks very much. I've got that. Item number 7, members. I'll just get my papers adjusted. Item number 7, members. Our next report is looking at the allocation of the discretionary budget for 2024 and 25. This report asks members to consider any key civic and community initiatives to be supported from the area committee discretionary budget. The total budget available to Annanadale and Eskdale is £80,215, and officers have presented a recommendation, Appendix 2, based on the recent member seminar as outlined within this report. We've got Jamie Nicholson here to speak to us and answer any questions. Jamie, the first point is always, do you anything you want to add to say or speak to the report? If no, I'll go straight to questions. It's up to you.
Nothing further to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Jamie. Did I see Councillor Driver coming in there, Archie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think the report covers everything that was said and has been done in the past, which is really good. Happy to agree the recommendations as they are, Chair, because I think it covers all of the things that have been said before on this particular item.
Thank you, Councillor Driver. I'll just double check. Dennis, Councillor Mail. Thank
yeah,
you.
it's just a simple one, Chair. Page 90, support the Langham Common riding. I mean, we had a bit of a trouble last year trying to make sure that the awards were there for the Cornet's Mother and that. So does this grant cover the cost of the glassware that gets done? Just to make sure that's the case, because last year I think we did a bit of a stushy about it and a bit of a carry on about it to get it in place. This is the presentation of the glass of the Cornet's Mother, and I think the right and left.
Yes, I can confirm that the funding's there to grant those awards. As
okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you much for that. We have Councillor Stephen Thompson. Stephen, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just on the Christmas festivities. I know there's been a bit of work done in Johnston Bridge and Ecclefechan just to explore what the cost would be to set up their own Christmas lighting, and I know the communities, both settlements, have at various stages of this, but Johnston Bridge did have the lights up to great impact last Christmas, and worked with the contractor just to get a cost for that. So I think they bought the lights, etc. It was just about the fittings, and I think it amounted to something like £1,800. And one of the, I suppose, bids ultimately would be to try and somehow build that into a future contract, but obviously that budget has to come from somewhere. But would those figures be sort of accurate, and is there a mind to potentially do that if we were minded as an area committee to vary to sort of marginal extent some of the budgets across the piece? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Obviously, the report before you today is on the existing and historical 7 communities that are previously been involved with Christmas festivities. There has been some work done with additional communities, Johnston Bridge being one of them, Ecclefechan and Kilpatrick Fleming. The budget before you would need to, if members agreed to add additional communities to the discretionary grant budget, then obviously this budget would have to be funded from other priorities that are presented before you today.
Thank you very much for that, Jamie. Stephen, we've got Archie Driver wanting in as well, for what I can see, Councillor Marshall, but we'll come back to your point at the very end, I think, Stephen. Councillor Driver, then Sean. Yeah,
thanks, here. It's just it's a question more than anything else, and it's just a wee rumour that I heard that the Gretna Gala may be folding. So I'm just wondering if maybe Stuart or Jamie's heard anything about
that. Councillor Driver, I'm aware that the previous organiser has made a request for other organisers to step forward, but at the moment I'm not aware that the Gretna Gala is folding. There's been no confirmation of that at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall, Sean.
Yeah, I was just on the point. I think you mentioned the 7 areas that are covered. I think it was Jamie that had mentioned that, and I think that was based on that there's 7 defined settlements in Annandale and Eskdale. So those are the ones that the service was provided to. One probably lesson to learn as well, maybe, and it's maybe just to have a discussion with the contract. But I remember just gone there was some quite severe storms, and some of the Christmas lights were damaged in some of the settlements. So it might be an idea to look at how quickly we can take lights down after they've been up over the Christmas period.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Marshall. We've certainly had that feedback from some of the communities already, so we'll make sure that any contract awarded in future, and we'll try and relay that information back to try and get the removal of the Christmas lights as quick as possible.
Okay with that, Sean?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Come back to your point, Stephen. I think Councillor Driver put forward a proposal at the beginning. I'd be more aligned to stick with that if we could, but if there's future arrangements for other settlements to come forward, because there probably is beyond, I think, Johnson Bridge, Ecclefechan and Comparative Fleming. So I wonder if that's some kind of, I'm not saying even a future report, but it could be incorporated into future reports that come forward for that type of application of funding. Stephen, what are your thoughts on that, though, please? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, there's been work done with the communities just to try and explore this a bit and deliver the lights for that community amenity, which has happened. So, but I accept that, the 7 settlements there, I think, must be the 7 largest by population in Annandale and Eskdale. I'm sure somebody can correct me if it's not. But so there is a logic to that, if that's the case. And of course, Johnson Bridge and Ecclefechan, I think, would be less than that. So it might be just down to discretionary ward members' budget to maybe support some of those local things until we, as a wider area committee, would choose to agree that. But I think it's actually been a useful exercise to find out more accurate figures, because I think in years past, some of those figures were very different to what they are in the table there, and maybe that now more accurately reflects the sort of true relative cost of light delivering the service. So that's probably helpful. So happy to go with the recommendations, but I think it's one to watch because we might find a better way of doing things in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, Councillor Thompson, we are actively speaking with other communities within Annandale and Eskdale and trying to gather that additional information on actual costs for Christmas festivities. So hopefully in the future we'll have a fuller picture of the actual costs on some of the other settlements that we'll be able to present to members.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Councillor Marshall, Sean, you want back in?
Yeah, it was really just to confirm with Stephen that not only are they the 7 largest settlements population-wise, but at the time, because obviously when we were determining this at the time, there was other communities that were interested as well, but they were defined as large settlements within the local development plan. And I think, right across Dumfries and Galway, I think there only is 15 large settlements. So we decided, on that basis that they would be the ones that we would support. But Stephen's made a good suggestion as well. There's a ward allowance that can maybe support some of the smaller communities if they want to have that service.
Thank you, Sean. Stephen, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Sean. I know there's a bit of history to it, and I know going back the way Eastrig's had a sort of laughable amount allocated towards it, which now is sort of a bit more reflective potentially. So yeah, no, appreciate that. And as you say, the word allowance is there for exactly these types of things in our localities. So thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Councillor Thompson. So, Councillor Driver's already moved it, and I would support him. I think that the rest of the committee is that we note 2.1, note 2.2, agree 2.3, agree 2.4, and agree 2.5 members. But obviously, there's been discussion out with, and we'll pick up on those points away from here in regards to further settlements being developed. Thank you very much, members. Item number 8. Anything we're moving on to? Members, our next report is in relation to Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee's Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget for 24-25. The need to tackle poverty and inequalities in our communities continues, and we see the impact that the cost of living crisis is having across our locality. It's essential that we seek to provide opportunities to support our most vulnerable residents Members are asked to close the Tackling Poverty and Inequality Small Grant Fund, which was opened in September 23 using unallocated remaining funds from 23-24 budget, and to carry forward the remaining balance. Furthermore, members are being asked to consider the key priorities, eligibility and criteria, and to establish a fund which will provide support across Annanadale and Eskdale, focusing the fund on key priority areas based on discussions from the recent members' seminar. Jamie again is in the hall. She's here to answer any questions. But Jamie, first of all, do you want to speak at all to this before we start?
Thank you, Chair. Just like to highlight, since the small Tackling Poverty and Inequality grant has remained open, there is a new amended figure to the recommendation in 2.1, which then will obviously affect 2.2 should members agree 2.1. So the agreed carry forward would now be £3,750.21, which would, if members agree, which would mean that 2.2, you would note that the Tackling Poverty and Inequality budget would now be £38,076.21.
Thanks very much, Jamie, for that further information. Members, I'll open up for questions, comments and proposals, if required. I think this could be similar to the last one, as Councillor Driver started off. Archie?
Yeah, again, Chair, this is pretty straightforward. We have this every year. I think Jamie's done a good job in bringing us up to date with that extra grant that came in there, and happy to agree the recommendations.
Thank you. So I'll read them out, 2.1 and 2.2 in particular. So 2.1 is to agree to close the carry forward with a balance of £3,750.21 from the small grants fund outlined in paragraph 4.3 as amended. 2.2 is to note, subject to 2.1, the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget for Annanadale and Eskdale for 24-25 is £38,076.21 as outlined in paragraph 4.2 and 4.3 as amended. And agree 2.3 and 2.4. Members? Thanks very much, members. Jamie, thank you. Number 9, just give me a wee second to catch up. Members, our next report is in relation to Annan Harbour Regeneration Project, and it provides us, as we requested, with an overview of how this major regeneration project will impact on Annan and the wider region. I'd like to thank Stuart McMillan and Melissa McGarry for providing this area committee with such an in-depth report. It really allows members to gain an understanding of the significance of this project. Members of the committee may be aware that our council's senior leadership team and all area committee chairs and vice chairs, along with our leader and deputy leader, visited Annan Harbour earlier this month to discuss this major project, and I would encourage all members, if you haven't already done so, to engage with Annan Harbour Action Group and arrange a visit to further develop your own knowledge on these plans. It was first class, that meeting, that visit. We've got a fuller understanding, much fuller understanding in regards to what's been trying to be achieved there, the funding streams, and probably a couple of obstacles that are in the road as well, but hopefully getting ironed out. So, a wee bit of history in regards to this one again. So this was a request in particular by Councillor Brodie as we came forward. So, Richard, I'll give you the first chance, but what I'll do first before you come in and say anything, I'll give Stuart and Melissa a chance to speak to the report, add anything at this moment in time. You want to speak to the report at all, or do you just want to take questions? It's up to yourselves.
I think we should just move to questions, Councillor Carruthers. It's thanks for the comments about it being such a thorough and in-depth report. It's kind of all there, and we've poured everything into that. So hopefully, members of the committee have had a chance to have a look at it, and we're here to answer any follow-ups. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks for that, Stuart. Councillor Brodie, Richard.
Thanks for letting me come and chair. Yeah, it's a very exciting project, the Annan Harbour Regeneration Project. It's going to bring nearly £20 million of benefit into the local area, and we thank the council for supporting, doing all the work to support it, and also for the extra money which was agreed in November, December to take forward the project to a place where we can actually start it. So I like lots of big projects in the region. It's very exciting, but I'm just concerned about our capacity to deliver this, because there's very tight timescales on the project. There seems to be a bit of slippage because we were supposed to have risk workshops starting in April, but these are now going back to July. We've also got a funding gap that we have to meet. We have to meet because obviously the government have awarded the money, but they haven't taken into consideration inflation. So the question would be, what are we doing to address this funding gap? And the council was supposed to agree a way forward, an agreement with the Ann Harbour Group and the Clerf arrangement. That doesn't seem to have been signed yet, so I'd like some feedback on where we are with that signing that agreement. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. I'll just allow it for whoever wants to come in between Stuart and Melissa to answer these questions as they come forward. Just allow yourselves to come in just naturally.
Yeah, I think I'll certainly start, Councillor Crothers, and thank you, Councillor Brodie, for your queries. There's as you'll be aware, a lot of work being done through the economic development team and the legal teams in terms of the grant agreements. I got a note this morning to say that the legal team are finalising that at the moment, so hopefully with the group very shortly in terms of the Clerf grant. So our award of grant that will have allowed the group to have advanced their design work and advanced the work of their design teams. The next bit of all of that is to extend the grant funding agreement for the capital project for the LUF spend, which will have within it all of the assurance requirements that the UK government has for us that we have to pass through, obviously to the group. So we're entering into a new way of working, I think, with Annan Harbour Action Group, because we have to look at this project very much as the council supporting the development of the project, with the Harbour Group as being our project sponsor. So part of that will be done quite formally through legal agreement, etc. But the other part of it will be done through very close cooperation and collaboration to move the project forward. So the sort of things that we are putting in place to allow that to happen are, first of all, quite a high level, like senior officers meeting with the project group. That includes senior officers from the council, but also senior civil servants from the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, to guide the Harbour Group and ourselves in terms of project governance and insurance requirements. So that, I think, will be extremely helpful. Councillor Brodie mentioned the development of a risk framework, and this is something that as a project team, we've been really keen to work with the Harbour Group to be able to get a really in-depth understanding of all the project risks from this point forward. And it's a very pragmatic way of managing a project, is to really be aware of those risks and the bits of work that we all have to really concentrate on hard to be able to enable the delivery of the project. So that's been difficult to set up. Lots of people need to be involved. Lots of people have different holiday requirements now. We thought we were there for the end of June, but there's a big European football tournament on in Germany, and there's key people away. So these are the practicalities of trying to organise things in the early summer. But I think we're nearly there with a date. 17th or 18th of July, I think, has been muted now as where we're going on that. On the funding gaps, and this is where I'll maybe bring Melissa in as well to cover all of this off. Again, we have to look at this as a collaboration between the council and the Harbour Action Group. There will be no more government money put into this. They have absolutely made it clear that the Luff Award is the Luff Award, and that's a set amount. We, of course, have our own part of our own asset class going in to support this. So we need to work with the group, with their design team and their cost consultants through the further stages of design, getting that recosted, work through a value engineering process probably with the group to see what is affordable, so that we can actually determine what the funding gap actually is, and then open up those strategic discussions about covering all that off. I'll bring Melissa in here as well, just on some of that, to add in anything else. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Chair, just to add to that, so with regard to the cost plan, so the report sets out the figures that were included in the LUF 2 bid, and to date we've got 13.1 million confirmed funding towards the project, although a cost plan, an iteration of the cost plan was supplied by the group in Q3, which we added an inflationary amount to allow for inflation, which came out with a figure just over £15 million. However, the way this would work for us is that the project doesn't yet have planning consent. So I think for us to move in terms of assembling the rest of the funding package, what we really need is a cost plan that reflects a design with a statutory planning consent. We would use that figure. So if that takes us to the 15 million, that would then enable us to then update a funding strategy and look at how we would address the affordability aspect of the project. So we do that when the planning consent, and then again, work is underway at the moment to start developing a more advanced stage of design, subject to the planning coming through. We then freeze it at another point, which is called pre-tender cost plan. So that would enable us to do a further check in terms of the affordability of the project, and make sure that all the funding was in place, so that the group can then go out to tender. So the thing about budget and funding, it is a movable feast, but the way we try and do this is at key points where we freeze it at key stages throughout the project. And what we've tried to do in the report that we've supplied you with today is to give you where we are just now. As I say, the next key stage, the key milestone, is when the planning consent, when the project, if it's awarded planning consent, we can get an updated cost plan there, and then have another look at the funding strategy. And as Stuart has already outlined, there are a number of options in terms of funding that we would want to consider, including value engineering as well, but not purely limited to that. There are other aspects, and what we're doing is that we're able to access support from the UK government from something called the Delivery Associates Network, and we're already doing that, as are other local authorities with LUF projects across the UK, accessing support from there to look at specifically capital funding and affordability, because this isn't just affecting this project, it's affecting just about every project that has gone through LUF, because the LUF 3 grant awards were based on bids that were assembled in August 2022, and obviously the world has moved on since then, and inflation has had its impact. So I hope that answers Councillor Brodie's question. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. That's helpful, the replies there. I think there is a sort of pressing need for this CLARF agreement to be done, because it's been we've been discussing it for 3 or 4 months and it's still not agreed, and that's got a knock-on effect for payment of suppliers, Chairman. So maybe it's something you could take up with the Chief Executive to make sure we get this thing concluded as soon as possible.
I'll take that as an action, then, Councillor Brodie, if that's the case. But we can always revisit that when we come to the recommendations, if that's necessary. But so I tell you what I was looking at before I bring in Councillor Driver. Something I was looking at page 105, and it would affect all members sitting in the Planning Application Committee, is what I was thinking. And we've got our governance officer sitting beside me from the Planning Committee as well. So I'm just wondering how far advanced. So you're talking about a planning application coming in. It might be yourself as well, Richard. Plan application, so the bottom picture on page 105, how accurately does that reflect the proposals that will come forward by the way of a planning proposal? Because I was going to make comment, but I might restrict those comments is what I was thinking. I'll let you kind of, if you've got any idea, Richard, if not, I'll go to Stuart and Melissa to see if they any further information.
Well, I'm sure the official can update us, Chairman, but the planning application has been considered. It's been in for a couple of months, I think, now, and hopefully it'll be expedited. But
I suppose the bit I was conscious of it, if it ends up in front of the planning application committee, we've got a number of members on this committee that might want to make comments on that, and if they do, then they prejudice their stance in regards to sitting on that committee. So that's where I was, but I'll leave it at that. But members are aware of that situation. Probably that's the point I wanted to raise more than anything. And I'll probably exclude myself because I'm not exactly sure. I haven't seen it, the plan. I haven't looked at the plan application online or anything like that. But I'll restrict my comments. Councillor Dryburgh, actually, you want to come
in? No, Chair, I didn't.
Sorry, sorry, that was a misunderstanding. Councillor McGregor, Gail.
Thanks very much, Chair, and morning, and apologies for lateness. I was in another event, I'm afraid. Yeah, it was just to give reassurance to Councillor Brodie that I continue to raise this with the Chief Executive. So we're following up on the additional funding that will be required, obviously through Stuart and Melissa, but also that the issues around the harbour order and the Transport Scotland element of that, which seemed to have stalled as well. So I'm aware that the Executive Director has written to Transport Scotland to try and get some assurance around that element as well. But we'll definitely keep our foot on the pedal with this one because, you know, if we're getting good investment options coming into the region, we absolutely have to deliver on them.
Thanks so much for that, Gail. That's very much appreciated as well by Councillor Brodie, he's saying.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Gail.
So members, I'm looking for any further members got any particular points. I was going to make comments in regards to the design, the standards. It's already been out there, a really good report, and I've said that before I started. And it's, again, I would ask for feedback from yourselves. So this is something we've started, it's historically we used to have it, it's right away, it's but ideal we're getting it back. But we'll be keen from yourselves through some kind of format, but we'll pick up through Tracy, I think, and Stuart in particular, to say that what's your feedback in regards to how you feel presenting this way to this committee, the benefits you might achieve yourself. So we will come back to you at some point in an informal, so to speak, process. It'll not be through this committee decision-making process. Members, there's absolutely no one in the room, nobody else, but like I say, my comments are probably restricted now to what they were. Come back to what I said, it was a really good meeting, a site meeting that was. We got a good idea of what was happening there, including some of the complications that Councillor Brodie's brought up. So I'd just like to thank the report authors. So I've got recommendations. Recommendations is 2.1 is to members were asked to note the update on the Annan Harbour Action Regeneration Project as a strategic economic investment project that will contribute to the achievement of our Council Plan 23-28 as detailed within the report in the appendix, and 2.2 that they note that the Annan Harbour Regeneration Project is currently forecast to cost £13.1 million for the public purse and is expected to deliver an estimated £18.1 million in economic benefit for communities in Annan. Excellent. We've got some actions in the back of that, one of which Councillor Brodie's asked me to take, and I'll just go in and support. I think the leader of the council, Councillor McGregor, in regards to the actions she's already undertaken on the back of that request. Excellent. Thanks very much, members. Item number 10. Thank you, Stuart and Melissa. Item number 10 is our next report is on the Borderlands Inclusive Growth Deal and outlines the various programmes and projects within Annandale and Eskdale and their status across Dumfries and Galloway. Again, I'd like to thank Stuart McMillan for providing this report, which I know members will find informative. So Stuart, again, the standard format, anything you want to say in regards to this particular report, and if we give you the chance for that, then I'll go for questions and comments after that. Thank you.
Just a quick note, Chair, really regarding section 4.5 of the report, which is around the business infrastructure programme, and it is to confirm that some of the acquisition issues that this is sort of touches on are advancing towards what I think either Economy and Resources Committee or indeed full council in June. So I won't really be able to go into any depth of detail on some of that if members of the area committee have questions, because it's going to be subject to a further report to committee or council.
Maybe get some loose questions around that, but obviously if you can't answer them, you can't answer them for the sake of privacy, I think is what you're saying, confidential. Sensitive, confidential nature. Members, I'll open it up to yourselves for questions. Councillor Jimison, George?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just referencing page 110, Chapel Cross. Archie's more informed than I am on this, but I sit on the stakeholders group. What might be useful going forward is if given that the council, the NDA and what's called the NSS now, which formerly Magnox and South of Scotland Enterprise, I think the area committee could do with a bit of an update on just where this is going. It's been going on for a long time. Archie and I have been involved in discussions through the stakeholders group. One of the things that I asked at the stakeholders group is that who takes ownership of this, who takes agency. There's 4 organisations involved. There's time's passing on, decommissioning is carrying on, and there's a need for a legacy for the area. Annanadale and Eskdale was very, very well funded in terms of salaries and socio-economic benefits, and there's a legacy there that the NDA are obliged to support. But it doesn't seem to be going anywhere fast, so it might be that we actually ask them to come along. But I'll be guided by Archie on this because he's maybe more aware than I am, but I know that there's been discussions, but with little outcomes.
So I'll put that to Stuart first if he's got any comments. So before the meeting started, I had a quick conversation with members on about any other competent business and potential agenda items, so it might fit there as well, George. It might just fit, but and I see Councillor Marshall's wanting as well. But next we've got Councillor Dennis. Stuart, give you a chance to, if you've got any comments or you want to make in regards to George's point there.
Yes, I think absolutely understand the perception of that there needs to be something emerging here that members will be able to see and understand and be able to sort of see where the progress is. We're still very much at the starting points of defining what the development potentials are of the site, and it is enormous. Everybody will be aware of just the scale of this site is huge, and the complexity of the owners and the owners' relationships, etc. To all of that is very much part and parcel of that. What the Borderlands Growth Deal investment is all about is about enabling infrastructure that's going to unlock some of the potentials on the site, and that those site potentials are then realised by whatever the partnership of interests that are involved here ultimately formalises themselves to be, whether that's in the form of a joint venture or some other form of development model. So there's a lot of legal work to work through on that. The infrastructure investment that the Borderlands part of this is going to support will be driven by a conceptual model, a development framework for what the capacity of the site is going to be all about. So what do we use? What is the potential of that 60 hectares to actually deliver in terms of industrial space, energy investments, et cetera, and then all the infrastructure that's required both to get to the site from external road connections and active travel connections, and then what needs to be put in site in terms of road network, sustainable urban drainage systems, utility connections. So that's the point that we're on at the moment. So the team have been working on a development framework, which will form the basis of, again, a planning application that will come through and an outline business case. And that work is into 2025 to be able to actually start to define all of that. In the meantime, with working with South of Scotland Enterprise, Scotland Development International, the proposition of of Chapel Cross as an inward investment location or a location for a major energy investment, etc., is being promoted by these government level agencies. So working really closely with them, and members might have been able to have a wee look at the SDI video, which is the promotional video for inward investment interest into the site. So there's a lot of preparatory work to lay the ground properly that will allow a real acceleration of the project over the next year. And we've been more than happy at points through the next year to be coming back with more detail of the project and things as they emerge. But as I say, we're 2025 towards the tail end of 2025 before we're at that point of actually having even the outline business case defined and working through government approval processes to advance to FBC and draw down of funding.
Thanks so much, Stuart.
Thanks so much.
No, thank you. Thanks very much. And thank you, George, for that particular question, because my thoughts behind it, I think it's myself that actually brought this one forward as a potential, like you did with Gurfey. I brought this, and it wasn't just about Chapel Cross, it wasn't just about Anna, it was about Annanadale and Eskdale, the Borderlands project, how they come forward. It wasn't just about the Star of Caledonia either. But it's then to start this conversation, and George has picked up on the very point which stimulated those thoughts for me in the first place. What's happening at Chapel Cross? What is happening there? In fact, you've got your business opportunities running about the Annan area as well, without going into that level of detail. But it's what's happening there, and we need to know that at area level. So this is exactly what's starting to happen. That was what I hoped would happen, and I'm sure Sean's got to come in and carry on and come back to further detailed reports. Do we need a detailed report in regards to the Chapel Cross site, the expansion of that, the sites that just been, there's been an acquisition there recently by the South of Scotland Enterprise? Do we need a further report on Star of Caledonia? What does the area committee think of that? How can we advance that, or so on and so forth? So I just think this is what this whole idea from myself was about, so local elected members can get in and start to drive forward. But Councillor Marshall, Sean, over to you now. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, sorry. It's fine. No, sorry. It was. Go on then, Sean. Go on. It's if it's on the same point. Yeah. Dennis is wanting as well.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and accept that I'll welcome the development of the area committee business, but one thing that Stuart said as well, that obviously a lot of the opportunities Chapel Cross, I think by 2028 there'll be no capacity to the grid, so I think that's being looked at as well, because a lot of the developments at Chapel Cross will require connection into the grid there. But I just think, just to maybe avoid duplicity, when Chapel Cross ceased generation in 2003 and the NDA were formed in 2005, I think the importance to Chapel Cross through the decommissioning to Annandale and Eskdale, and also to the wider Dumfries and Galloway. So when they formed the site stakeholder groups, we identified at Chapel Cross that all 12 at the time members of Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee are actually, it's an outside body. So all 12 elected members are invited along to the site stakeholder group, which met 4 times a year. And then with the change, it's now moved to 3 times a year, but all 11 members of the SSG are invited along, and there's 3 meetings a year. And there that you do get an update on what's happening on the site with regards to decommission, but you also, there is a standard item on the agenda about what's happening with the Chapel Cross project. So I think it's fair to say that the attendance isn't good from Annandale and Eskdale councillors, but rather than having, and you could have a presentation to the area committee, or I think the next meeting is I'm not sure when it is, I think it's in August. So it might be, if there's a good attendance there, they could do a special, maybe a larger presentation on the Chapel Cross project rather than just getting the update. But all members do get the papers as well, so they get the papers on the update on the Chapel Cross project and on the decommission at Chapel Cross. So it might be better that on this instance, Chair, just for Chapel Cross, if we've seen better attendance at the SSG from the 11 councillors, that might be a better way of doing it.
No, thanks for them comments, Sean. I disagree with them entirely. But we'll come to that when we get to recommendations. Councillor Mel, Dennis.
Thanks, Chair. And it's nice to hear you keep mentioning Eskdale and everything you say, because within this report, again, the place that's missing from everything is Eskdale. And so the question is there a way that organisations and communities within Eskdale can actually bid into the borderlands to get funding for things to help support them, or is there not?
Stuart, I think that's for yourself.
Yeah, thanks very much. So, thanks, Councillor Mayo. I mean, as you'll be aware, the Borderlands is a predefined investment package, work on which goes back several years in terms of the projects and the programmes that are part and parcel of that bid. So, it's a fairly locked down programme. It's a fairly locked down set of projects and programmes. There is an opportunity within the energy programme where that programme is going to be looking later on this year for expressions of interest to come forward from places, communities, organisations, etc., who are interested in running pilots for energy investments of all sorts that relate to the energy master plan that the Borderlands Growth Deal prepared about 12 to 18 months ago. And that is quite an interesting, certainly interesting work, and there's certainly investable investment opportunities that places will be able to bid into for types of investment of different scales and of different types, whether that's closed wire, or closed pipe, energy distribution, district heating schemes, etc., etc. So there's still that to come in the Borderlands deal, but for the moment, the bulk of the deal is, because it's working through these business case propositions with government. It's all quite locked into what the council essentially agreed to in 2021 as to what the programme would be.
Well, that's the problem I have, because in 2018, Langham especially was designated as an area of in great need. First, it started with SURF being put in to help, and then when SOCI was being formed, it was identified as one of 3 communities in the whole of Dumfries and Galloway that actually needed funding and help, and therefore SOCI came to the table and they put in a package. We were told that if things were developed properly, like a community business plan, etc., everything, that there would be support from all the main agencies. So the business plan was drawn up, the community forum was formed, big projects came forward, and suddenly things like the Borderlands were designated by Dumfries and Galloway Council as not needing to go to Langham. And I just don't understand why, when it was probably one of the leading communities with its community plan being used by SOCI to show to every other community literally in the south of Scotland as good practice, that suddenly the Eskdale Valley got totally missed out and has been left where it is, still in the doldrums, still desperately trying to do things for itself. And yet, everywhere we turn, there's money being given out to everybody else except the communities in the Esk Valley. Even down now to the whole active travel thing, we have still no direct route into Dumfries and Galloway. We've got people we can't get to hospital, we can't get them into Arran just for general services, and yet we just seem to be totally, completely, absolutely ignored all the time. And I just don't understand how we got to that state when the promises were made through SOCI, through the council, as special meetings, that the help would be there. And it's just been totally ignored. You probably can't answer the question, but I mean, it's got to the point where now this is serious. And we've actually asked for a meeting with the Chief Executive, with the community councils, and I think all the leaders of each council group to start to address some of the issues, especially on the travel front at least. And I'm still waiting to hear that meeting will take place, because I know the leaders of the council have been in touch with the Chief Exec and are asking for that. And I would hope that that's something this area committee will support as well, because obviously Borderland is gone and we've lost that. And now that SOCI is closing the doors on everything because they've had 25% budget cut, then things are looking pretty desperate. And a community that has worked its butt off to get where it is, to be in the lead in community development, is going to be left behind again and probably destroyed as a result.
Thanks, Dennis. I'll pick up on this one, Stuart, only if it feels appropriate. You can come in at the end. So I think you're absolutely right, Dennis, for making them comments, and that's what I hope this particular type of subject matter, along with Gurfick and so on and so, but this one in particular, because I thought whether it's yourself, actually, I thought whether it's people living in Moffat and Lochmaven and I think, where's the project for Borderlands or these larger scale capital investment projects in my ward, because they all seem to be sitting in Annandale South, but you have got Star of Caledonia, Annandale East and Eskdale, and I thought, well, it probably will stimulate that type of debate. But Stuart, my understanding is absolutely clear. We're past a point in time with the Borderlands Inclusive Growth Deal at this moment in time in regards to retrospectively going back and try to add additional capital investment or programmes to that. We've been through that bidding process has been agreed, and we've got a formal structure in place in which to deliver them. So we're at the delivery stage now. So, but I do think it's important, and going back to it's what I was saying to George earlier, and I think that the wider committee is actually, when we get to any of the company business, we'll be discussing that in private. So if there is a future agenda item about how do we get further investment in S Valley and or wherever it may be, whatever part of Annandale and Eskdale, then we can pick up on that, at least start the conversation. But I think the valid points that you're bringing up, Dennis, but I think at this point in time we can retrospectively go back and we'll be beyond the point in time. No, and Dennis is accepting that. But Stuart, just in case there was any further comments, if not, I'll move on. Take it as
no, nothing further. No, Chair, thanks.
Dennis? The other thing was this request for a meeting with the chief officers of the council that was also sent to the leaders of each political group, who I believe have spoken to the chief executive, that the area committee supports that to happen. The meeting with the community councils to discuss things that are going on, especially things like active travel and etc.
So we're very fortunate, Andy and Estelle, because I can see Gil McGregor, Stephen Thompson and Archie Drivers there as well. Very fortunate we've got a lot of leaders, political groups in this area committee. So again, any other company business, let's just pick up on that there. So that's an action that we'll pick up on that particular point. So I think that's everybody, isn't it? No, Archie, you wrote in, Councillor Dryborough.
It's okay, Chair. Sean covered what I was going to say. It is the 21st of August that the next Chapel Cross SSG is on.
No, thanks very much. And the only reason I made the comments I made was because I think it's a really good forum, and absolutely do. You get the best presentations, best information, but it's there. The committee is a legitimate decision-making body of the council, and that's probably the point I would refer back to. And if we need to cover that later on recommendations, happy to do that. Whereas it's a formally recognised outside body to the council, and it is there for information, and we'll wear a different hat when we sit on it as elected members when we turn up. Councillor Stephen Thompson. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And it was just to make sure that Councillor Brodie got recognised as a group leader as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. You're just sitting right next to me. I recognise that many times as that political group leader. Apologies for that. We'll come back to that in any other comment of business. Thanks for that chastising. No, so I haven't got any other members looking to. I mean, I think, Stuart, and the kind of stuff I was interested particularly about the Annandale area. It's in Annandale South. Chapel Cross, that's been covered fairly well. We'll come back to George, your initial comments round about, you're saying Archie could cover stuff too, but just before we do, there's been an acquisition. The kind of updates I was hoping to get was been an acquisition by South Scotland Enterprise, from what I can see, sent a land transfer at opposite the gateway to Chapel Cross site. I thought we might got to do what's the intention there, what's happening. For me, it's not the council owned, or we're not driving that particularly, but is there some kind of update in regards to that site?
Yeah, no, your intel is absolutely right. The site has been acquired by SOCI. They have been really keen to make an early intervention, or to make an early acquisition of land in that vicinity, to start to really link up companies that have expressed interest to SOCI about locating in the south of Scotland, and SOCI don't have a property portfolio until now to be able to direct people to. So their project there, now that they have taken ownership of the site, their fencing is now around the site, their boards are now on the site, etc., is to start to market that land for business expansion or indeed inward investors into the region, and they will lay that site out and build out development platforms. What we're being very careful about, and SOCI are very close to us on the developing the strategies for how all these different packages of land will relate to each other. So they're being very careful about the scale of development that they are promoting on that. So it will be a smaller scale of unit that will ultimately be going on to the Chapel Cross site. And it's essentially to serve an inward and an enterprise sort of network provision. So I think it's a really good move. It's going to actually get an early start to Chapel Cross as a location for new business to be thinking about. We'll develop the profile of the site in advance of the major investments starting to come online and the infrastructure improvements. So I think it's a really positive first step. I think that's all I can say about that at the moment.
No, excellent. No, so I look right onto that site from where I live, Stuart. That's how I got the depth of knowledge. So you do this new fencing, there's been ground investigation, what's going on, spoke to Spain. They're carrying out further, I think it's work on the insulator, so they're starting that upgrade, as Sean touched on earlier, that upgrade in regards to expanding the infrastructure there that'll accommodate further connections from energy providers. I just think it's very important, but the thing I would emphasise in that is that it's the type of business that can actually apply to be on. I know that, like you say, going back to maybe be a different report coming. George has touched on that, and Archie's probably coming touching it. The other side, the other sites potentially available with the Chapel Cross site, very large sites, look for large scale business, but it's how they can, this site in particular, how can that potentially accommodate local businesses? I'm thinking, because for many years we've got a problem in Annan, we've got a sawmill. I say a problem, I say that in a degree of indifference, but it's a problem, and it's a positive at the same time. So we've got a reasonably sized business at top of Anley Road, on the bottom of Solway Street, that kind of area. It's sawmill. We get local members have had complaints in regards to heavy movement of traffic up and down that road for a large number, a lot of years. 1 year when there was a lot of frost, the road completely failed. We did a complete restructure of the road down there because of the size of vehicles going in. As the frost lifted, the road had softened and then it just destroyed it completely. But potentially, I would have thought this site here we're talking about would have opened up potential moving and allow that maybe for different types of development in that area, more appropriate for that side of Annan. I just wondered for the size and scale and then I'll bring you straight in after that, Archie, once I've had it answered. Would South of Scotland's enterprise intent be to allow that size of scale of business and even smaller for that, accommodating local businesses that are looking to relocate, expand, so on and so forth? Stuart?
So this is where we have to look also at the business infrastructure programme, which is referred to in section 4.5 of the report. So we have an Annan site within that we're seeking to acquire and then seeking to service and make available plots there as well for local businesses. So we've got different scales of development and different players involved, I suppose, but actually opening up a lot of potential development land for industry and business uses in the Annanadale Eskdale area. So we are targeting the business infrastructure programme on the local business market. The SOCI site, I think, could serve a little bit of that, but I think they're also looking at bringing new business into the region, so real additionality in there, and then the wider Chapel Cross site being the much larger scale potential investor. So lots of things happening at different scales, I think, and that's the plan to go forward and make sure that everything is sort of meshed together and nobody's tripping over each other for business, so that we can actually maximise the benefits to the area by accommodating all of these types of needs.
Thanks for that, Stuart. I didn't mention the other site intention because your comments regards the full council earlier, but no, thanks very much for that answer, and I'm sure we'll come back to speak about this again. So Councillor Driver, then Marshall. Archie?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. It's really sugary nail stuff, this one, since you've been mentioning South of Scotland Enterprise Agency. We have heard that the agency are looking to try and get the community benefit schemes of wind farms as a way of funding themselves. And we know there's already been a large cut of budget to the South of Scotland Enterprise Agency. I'm raising this here because I think we as an area committee should actually go against that, because the biggest majority of the funding that SOCI has is based on staff. And I can't see anything that they are delivering at the moment as a benefit to Annandale and Eskdale, other than they've now got a bit of land at Chapel Cross that can bring forward business units. Now, if South of Scotland Enterprise Agency want to fight on the community benefit schemes for wind farms, then I think we should take that fight to them and tell them to go away.
Really appreciate your comments in regards to that, Archie. That was news to me, but we've got two other speakers. We'll come back to that. We'll probably address a lot of this in the company business, let's be honest, but I think it's really a valid point. So I know, Dennis, you want to come in. Was it on the exact same point? Dennis is wanting to come in at the same point, then it's Councillor Marshall then.
Thanks, Chair. And funnily enough, 2 days ago, along with others, we had a meeting with Muirhall Energy that are building wind farms. And we made it very, very clear to them as a community that the last thing we would want to see is SOCI being able to grab this money, because it will not be used for what it's there for. And I know they are now looking at the possibility of how they redistribute funds, not from the wind farms that exist, but any new wind farms coming up, to see how they can do it better, to support communities better. And I fully agree with Archie. This has got to be fought tooth and nail, because I believe some of the wind farms, probably up in the borders area that are set up different, are actually looking at the possibility of joining up with SOCI. And I mean, it is literally, what's happened to SOCI is they have lost 25% of their grant. That's £10 million down to 30 million. And if what I heard the chairman say, the staff costs are nearly £9.5 million. So they've got a problem where they've lost a large chunk of their grant, and the way they're wanting to fill the hole is by taking the wind farm money. And I think we have got to fight it tooth and nail.
So I'm a great believer of evidence-led, and you're absolutely right, and I would agree. So if everything I knew was absolutely accurate, what yourself and Archie was saying, I think you'd be right behind it, saying, okay, why would we diminish the community benefit coming from potentially energy providers, wind farms, so on and so forth, and apply that to a government body that's got its own duties. It's government to fund that, no for them we're going to strip out the community benefit. So again, but that again, it's absolutely right, the arguments, but it needs to be evidence-led in particular. But Councillor Marshall, then McGregor. Sean?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, and Stuart touched on I think it was more on the local businesses units, which is opposite the Annan Business Park. So it might be worthwhile having a report on progress on that at some point. The area that's been developed by SOCI is on the old runway site. So, and I can understand why they've acquired that with there's the linkages in there and the roads, etc. The main Chapel Cross site, that's the area there that's for development, I mean, has already been recognised by the Scottish Government as being a green energy site. But Ian, you touched on the sawmill, and actually they'd looked at it a couple of years ago and kind of discounted it, but that was an area that they did look at for relocation. But I think there's another relocation they're looking at now. I've not heard for a while, but it was indeed something that was looked upon at the time, but I think it was discounted by the owners.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Sean. Councillor McGregor. Gail?
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, it's just on the back of Archie and Dennis's comments, which I think we can probably take under AOCB. That would probably be the best place to take it, but there certainly has been whispers around the agenda of SOCI in respect of wind farm funding. So I think it's a conversation that we need to have, probably in private at this stage, if that's okay.
That's excellent advice, I think, Gail, in regards to that. So, brilliant. Fantastic as far as I'm concerned. We're achieving the objectives. I want FM to frame off it a lot. Maybe want to have any comments. I'll just give you an opportunity. No, because there was that deficit. And we'll pick up on that in any other competent business if you wish to add at that point, because there is a deficit in regards to projects in that area. Right. Excellent. So members, we've been asked to note the update provided for projects with the... I would again, I'll come back to, it's Annanadale and Eskdale, welcome. I think we're welcome, rather than just note. George, we've been asked, and I'll come back to yourself, George, because there's comments you made, just make sure you're satisfied. We can pick them up and then the comments. Come back to our members. So members, we've been asked to note the updated. I think again we should Annanadale and Eskdale area committee should welcome the update provided for projects within the Annanadale and Eskdale area, settled in sections 4.3 to 4.7, and the status of projects across Dumfries and Galloway settled in the appendix, all along with the updated comments from Stuart today. But remember, just so I'm sure, so George, are you content with the points that you raised in the wider Chapel Cross site that can be picked up under any other company business?
No, I'm content. I understand Sean and Archie's comments that can be brought up at the SSG, but I do think it's very important that this committee is kept up to speed, because Annanadale and Eskdale was identified as an area that needed developed. Chapel Cross was a big employer for skilled workers. Even the salary levels that they get, people could come from Langham and work there. So that legacy we should be lobbying. We should be asking for more information, more reports. And I understand Stuart's comments that it's very complex. But if we aren't raising the flag every now and then, what's going on, then just subconsciously there's less pressure put on. So Annanadale and Eskdale needs employment. They need skilled jobs for young people to encourage them to stay, come back. So it's a big opportunity, especially with the legacy in terms of energy, climate change, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's important that we, as a regional area, should be pushing hard to just make sure progress is being made and that we're on a watching brief sort of thing. So I'm not really wanting to Stuart or people to spend a load of time and a lot of information that's way above our heads. It's just to keep them informed that we want to be informed of progress and we want to see progress.
Excellent, thanks for that, George. Members are covered, and I'm just taking it as trust that Tracy, you'll captured the actions there, and we'll see them in a minute next time for the agreement. Excellent. Sorry, Sean, Councillor Marshall. Sean, I missed you there.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, I don't think there's any harm in maybe getting a report on, because George mentioned about Chapel Cross and an employer. What we've got to remember, it's still a major employer, so the decommission work has got to go on for years, you know, and it's one of the largest employers in the region. So, you know, but there's also the potential for all these other new industries, etc., to be built round about that. So it might be at some stage that Annanadale and Eskdale in the near future gets an overview of the Chapel Cross project from its conception and what's happening at Chapel Cross, and then that can be further supplemented by us going along to the SSGs and getting the regular updates 3 times a year. But there'd be no harm in getting an overview of, you know, over what's happened over the last 10, 15 years at Chapel Cross and the potential opportunities in the future.
No, thanks very much for those comments, Sean. I agree entirely in regards to the size and scale at Chapel Cross as an employer still is. It is still a large employer, but in comparison to what it was, it's been diminished dramatically. But I agree entirely with what you're saying there. So we've agreed that under item number 10 with slightly amended change of words at the recommendation. Item number 11. Again, we set members to gather my thoughts together. I'll save that there, Stuart, if you don't mind. Right, members, item number 11. Our next project report, our next report provides an update in relation to 2 strategic housing investment plan projects in Annanadale and Eskdale, both proposed by Lordburn Housing Association at Selkirk Road, Moffat, and I would pronounce that as Murtham. Dennis, Murtham, Dennis is agreeing with that as a local Langham man. I worked in Langham for a while and they all called it Murtham. Selkirk Road, Moffat and Murtham Farm, Langham. I am pleased to see this report before us today, as there has been a lot of discussion regarding these developments in recent months as Lordburn's position in relation to the new bills change. James and teams today, and I think that's all over, whether it's area committee, service committees, integration joint boards, health social care partnership. There's been a lot of conversations, extra care, housing, care villages. So it really is good to see this stuff here today. And listen, Dennis, I thank you for asking for this in particular. So Jamie, what I'll ask you first is if you got any comments, you want to speak to this at all, or do you rather just prefer just go straight to questions? I'm sure there'll be quite a bit on this one. Jamie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, nothing further to add. Happy just to move to questions.
That's class. Dennis?
Yeah, and Chair, I'm now confused because I had a report just over a week ago that said that these projects were medium to long term, which was 5 to 10 years. That's not what this report is telling us. So can somebody update us, please, on what we think the timescale is for this? Because this is serious. This is about elderly people being able to stay in their communities and not being farmed out all over this region, and being able to live together with their partners and no have their partner at home, and then being maybe in Upper Nithsdale and travelling from Moffat or Langham or wherever to get to them. So it is serious, and I find it absolutely disgraceful that this has been stopped, and the excuses given for stopping about the cost, where, to me, somebody like Lordburn should have had all the costing in place when this started in 2018, and not suddenly blaming COVID and everything else for the rising costs. It's been an absolute damper for the community of Langham, and I suspect Moffat will be the same, because this was a promise. In fact, in Langham, they started digging up the ground, and they say they've cleaned the site up. Well, if that's the site they've cleaned up, I would hate to see the state of the houses, because it's a disgrace what has been left there. But have you got a date for when these things are going to start? Because if it's 5 to 10 years, then half the people that were hoping to get in these houses, or most of them, will be dead.
Jamie, hopefully you can answer that, and I will definitely come back with some comments myself. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Mail. Within the report, obviously cited that we don't have a start date for the sites either at Selkirk Road or at Martham Farm. We appreciate this incredibly disappointing for local members and for local residents as well. And ourselves as the council officers and the Scottish Government are working very hard to push Lorburn Housing Association towards this development commencing. In terms of a 5 to 10 year date, that's something that hasn't been discussed with ourselves. I met with Lorburn Housing Association just yesterday and the Scottish Government, and have been advised that they're very close to coming to the heads of terms signing with the potential developer to take these sites forward. Certainly nobody has referenced 5 to 10 years to ourselves. And as I say, we are pushing with the Scottish Government to make sure this comes forward as swiftly as possible.
Thanks, Jamie. That's why, going back to my comments earlier in regards to evidence-led, that's why it was my understanding too. It was progressing at a pace, and it was getting to that point. So, but you're fine. Just come back in.
I mean, I'm not going to say where I got the information, but it was somebody that is actually involved in the developments that said it was medium to long term, and medium to long term meant 5 to 10 years. So I'm hoping that what we're hearing here is changing that, because both these sites need to be developed, and they need to be developed as fast as possible, because the people that need to live there are desperate for them. And as I say, the situation with care homes and that gets worse by the day if they start to close. Where do these people go? Because now, just in Langham, we've got people in Carlisle, we've got them in Kirkpatrick Fleming, we've got them in Upper Nithsdale, I think over the other side of Dumfries, and for their families to visit, it's impossible. I mean, it's an absolute serious situation, and we need to see it solved as fast as we possibly can.
Yes, we'll definitely come back to that. So what can I say the committee do? And I think that's the point and try to achieve. So we'll come back to that though, and you'll get final comment. So Dennis make comments here, maybe not picked up completely, but Dennis will get the final say in this because he asked for this to be brought forward, so we'll come back, capture your comments along with others in regards to this. Jamie, the thoughts are probably going through my head at this moment in time, I think, is, okay, on the back of what Dennis is saying there, it's what powers and authorities has the committee got in regards to help progresses, help support. For instance, we will have at some point in the nearer future a meeting with the housing minister, for Scottish Government, for Scotland. It might be a topic that we can bring up, depends where it's progressed, where it is. So I just straight off the top of my head and put you behind the 8 ball, but I just wonder, I'm looking at Tracy and Stuart as well in regards to advice. So when we're looking at what can the committee do in regards to help support, advance both the Martham site at Langham and the Selkirk Road site at Moffat, and Lorburn Housing Association as an organisation, because the last thing they wanted to do was stop a project that was being included in the SHIP, been there through, I think it's been through every organisation that I sit on, which is a lot. It had the fullest of support, the level of resident support in that area as well, and whether it's bed blocking, as Dennis is alluding to earlier, or whatever it may be in the primary or secondary health, it's so fundamental and important to get these type of projects and then get on to the next project, whether it's in the east of the region or the west, because I know they're crying out in the west of the region too for similar type of projects. They're wishing they were actually at the stage we're in Annanadale and Eskdale. So, But Jamie, I'm just thinking, try to be solution orientated. I don't see any other members coming in at this moment in time. If they do, I'll give them the first chance to come in. But Jamie, other than that, I'm looking at some kind of solution orientated. What can we do, whether it's through this area committee, Strategic Housing Forum, E&R, whatever it be, the new E&I committee. I'll throw that to you first, and I'll come back to Stuart and Tracy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So the commitment in the Strategic Housing Investment Plan to work with the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership has been agreed by members, and that's come forward over a number of years. We've always looked to support them in whatever way we can. And I think, as you've referenced, the meeting with the Minister was unable to go ahead on the 8th of May, and we're looking to rearrange that meeting, obviously across the wider council and just Annandale and Eskdale, but it's obviously something we can bring up. The role of the Scottish Government, obviously, they have looked to support these projects. They provided acquisition funding for both of the sites. So they are fully committed to taking forward these developments. And obviously on the agenda that we did share with the Housing Minister was a discussion around the Affordable Housing Supply Programme. And I think that there's certainly an opportunity to raise these two particular sites with the Minister for his awareness and for his input. One of the challenges we do have from the Scottish Government, as members will be aware again in the wider sense across the Council, has been the cut in the Affordable Housing Supply Programme funding. We've gone from, we were allocated over 20.5 million, that's been reduced to 15.5 now. So we do have particular pressure on that budget. We have a number of projects we would like to come forward, and obviously these are all matters we would like to discuss further. I would be happy on a separate issue in terms of Annandale and Eskdale committee to see if there was a willingness to engage directly with the Chief Executive at Lawban on this matter and arrange a meetings, particularly with members that are affected by either Annandale and Eskdale or particularly by the Martham Farm, because I can sense obviously from previous conversations and today's with Councillor Mail that there is significant frustration within the local community around that particular development.
So members, there's no anybody else coming in. It's probably welcome. Councillor Jimison, George.
It's just a query, and Dennis will be able to help us with this. On page 119, 4.41, it states while still committed to the delivery of the extra care and housing, the project pause offers an opportunity to review the current demand for this type of accommodation, again in collaboration with AHSCP. That would suggest that there's some doubt about it, which I don't think there is. So why is that in there, basically? Is that just fluff or?
Sorry, just refer that again. Sorry, Dennis, I'm not being. Just refer that paragraph number again. Right, so it's 4.4.1. Sorry, I was looking at something completely different. No, fine. Go on, Dennis, then I'll come back to Jamie after that.
There is nothing I can think of that would take them back to the table other than cost in trying to reduce the number of houses they're going to build. Because as far as I'm concerned, this was all done, ready to go. It's two projects. One was the care for the elderly housing, which was sheltered, then extra sheltered with right care, right place coming into it. And the other was for 70 houses for general use or for sale as a second tranche. So that first tranche, as far as I'm concerned, was locked in. It was going to be bungalows with 2 bedrooms for the elderly, which is perfect. And while, yeah, within the community there's a bit, oh, does it have to be out at Murtham? But generally the opinion was, well, if our elderly family can end up living in one of those houses, at least we've got them nearby and we're not having to split the family up and things like that. So I can see no reason. The other one I kind of see is, I talked to Buccleuch Estates and they say that there are no issues about ground or access or anything. So within the two, somebody's telling a few porkies.
Jamie's got to come to yourself, because when I read that as being a similar approach is being considered for the Murtham Farm, with recognition of the differences between the two locations, while still committed to the delivery of extra care housing. The project pause offers an opportunity to review the current demand for this type of accommodation, again in collaboration with the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership. Jamie, I need you to clarify that point, because I had a different view in regards to what Dennis you just said there. Jamie.
Yeah, thanks. And apologies if it's not clear within the report, but the intention is just to highlight that the demand information that was previously provided by the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership is now around 5 to 6 years old. And it's important that any demand information we have now is up to date. It's certainly not saying that there's no demand. The important thing is that we recognise what the demand is, so that if there is either an increase or it remains the same, we're able to manage that demand within the development. No reference to there no longer being a demand. If that's unclear, then hopefully I've clarified that point now.
I know, on a different site or anything like that, no. If it was going to be a different allocation, it might have reallocation to maybe. But because of the plan application, 74 House has been agreed, it's been approved, I think, again, we're beyond that point in time. But George, thanks for that clarity. George, are you okay with that? Yep, George has got hands up saying he's got that clarified. So we've got a fuller picture, Dennis, with your explanation as well. Right, members. So, where are we? So we got to end the recommendation now. I think George just came at the very end. Let's remind myself where I am. I've got them here actually, I'll use them from here. Members, again, we're being asked to note the update. I think again, welcome, Annanadale and Eskdale Area Committee welcomes the update the Garden Street Housing Investment Plan project at Selkirk Road, Moffat, as detailed in paragraph 4.2, and the same level of wording for 2.2. Annanadale and Eskdale Area Committee welcomes the update in regards to the Motham site in Langham, and at Lorburn Housing Association and Dumfries and Galloway. Council continue to collaborate with the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership in the delivery of Selkirk Road, Moffat and Motham Farm, Langham. I think, so we've got a lot of clarification, but maybe an action in regards to Annanadale and Eskdale Area Committee, maybe in Eastern Eskdale in particular, but how we get that meeting between the Chief Executive of Lorburn Housing Association, have local members, and it can go wider, it can be extended beyond it. Happy to be there as well, but how we can extend that, at least have that invitation. We could leave that action with you, Jamie. I think that's what you were suggesting in regards to the most up-to-date information on how that site will be delivered.
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. I'll take that action away and get onto that straight away.
Dennis, are you comfortable enough for that?
The only other thing would be if that meeting isn't going to happen fairly soon, then timescale for the project. Because, as I say, there are now obviously different messages coming from different areas. The message I got actually came through the health board. I'm not going to say who or what, but that's where it came through.
No, so happy with that, because Jamie's information is contrary to that because of the communications with Scottish Government and Lorburn Housing Association. But Jamie, if that could happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks, do you think that's achievable?
Certainly make every effort to achieve that, Chair.
Subject to availability, particularly by Lorburn Housing Association. Excellent. So we've agreed the minutes, slightly amended. Jamie, can't thank you enough for coming in and taking that report. And we'll move on to item number 12. We've got some actions behind that. We'll be in touch, Jamie. Thank you. Item number 12. Last but not least, but we've got a wee bit of business, member, at the end. Formation of the pump track. So our final report is in regard to the proposed formation of a pump track in Hope Johnston Park in Moffat. Members will recall in 2022 this committee agreed in principle to the installation of a pump track in Hope Johnston Park, subject to public consultation, work being undertaken and the relevant planning approvals being granted. Nicola Simpson and Stephen Wiley are both here to take questions or make comments, so on and so forth. But listen, same as everybody else, I'll use the same format. Do you want to speak to this particular report, outline anything, or do you want to go straight into questions and answers? I'll leave it to yourselves to decide.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have an update, a fairly significant update for you, actually. The report details that there's currently a funding shortfall for this project of £40,000. In the couple of weeks since the report was finalised, Swest Trans have suggested that they could provide a grant to cover this shortfall in funding in this project and could include this in their programme for 24-25, which is obviously excellent news, and officers are currently working through the detail of this with Swest Trans at the moment. So that means that there is now a funding package in place for this project. And other than that, happy to take questions.
Thanks for that, Nicola. Much appreciated. Councillor Gail McGregor. Gail, you're first.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks for the update, Nicola. That's really, really helpful. I think from my perspective, option 2 is absolutely the option. As you know, we hosted the UCI World Cycling Championships last year, and the region has been given global cycling status by the UCI now. And I think South of Scotland Destination Alliance are sort of marketing us and Scottish Borders as the home of the bike. So I think anything that could encourage, national, international competitions, to our small region again, would be absolutely fantastic. So I think option 2 is absolutely the way to go, and wish them the best of luck in getting it done, and then hopefully getting events into the area that will help the local economy as well.
Thank you. Nicola, any points? Just when I'm looking at the recommendation, I'm seeing it's to note option 2. Is that a decision that we need to make today in regards to that?
Yes, that was the overwhelming feedback from the engagement sessions that we carried out, both with the public and with the school pupils and teachers at the school. So that would be our recommendation as well. The option 2 is the preferred option. It's got more challenge to it for the children, which would keep them engaged with it for far longer. The smaller track was fairly basic, and the children would be flying around it in 5 minutes and then looking for something else. So this is a lot more challenging, can result in competitions taking place, which would be a big draw into the area, as Councillor McGregor has mentioned. So we do think it's better, and for the slightly higher amount of money, we think that would be a worthwhile investment.
First class. Do we have to agree that, Nicola? And we'll come back to that point. Do we have to agree that? Is that just a noting?
Well, it's noting that was the preferred outcome by the people who participated. So that's what the public have said they want. So
we can agree that.
We're listening to them. Yes.
Excellent, first class, community led. Councillor Davis, Lynn.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, being a local member for Annandale North, I've had quite a lot of local contact about the site's location. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a great idea, the pump track. It'll be a great pull to the town, but the chosen site, being the Hope Johnson, is situated in a region where access involves a gate opening directly onto the A701, located near a bend that is notorious for high-speed traffic. This setup could present a significant safety risk for users entering and exiting the track from the location. On this basis, I'm wondering, has there been any thought given to getting a comprehensive review of the site's suitability done? Thank you.
That was something that was mentioned during our consultation exercise as well, and something that we were very keen to explore further. When we went to the school, Stephen and I, to engage specifically with the pupils, one of the questions that we asked them was, how did they see themselves travelling to the site? And quite a number of the kids that we spoke to said that they would probably come across Eastgate, up Academy Road, continue on up Old Edinburgh Road, Beech Grove, and then cut down through Hope Johnson Park to get to the site. And they currently said that they attend like the tennis courts, which are on Beech Grove, and that is the route that they take to go there as well. They tend not to go up the Edinburgh Road itself. So we appreciate that. The other option would be for pupils to come in through the car park at the sports barn and go through the park for the remainder of the distance, understanding that people have expressed concerns. We haven't at this stage sought to do any further formal engagement with the road itself, but obviously could consult with roads colleagues to see if there's traffic counts and measures could be looked at as well. But the children themselves, and possibly more, add more weight to that, the teachers who actually would plan to take children there during the school day, they did not have any concerns with that, those proposed routes, or any concerns with the safety at all. So we have explored it, yes, and it's a very valid concern, and we would want to ensure the safety of everyone going forward.
That's great. Thanks for that, Nicola.
Thanks very much, both. Councillor Stephen Thompson. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, really pleased to see this come in front of us today, and I think some of the report was kind of predicated on the fact that there was a shortfall in funds, but obviously Nicola's addressed that at the start. So just in terms of the working group and the volunteers who were, I suppose, had this gone ahead without that news, they would have been contacted to form a group to help sort of apply for funds. What happens with that going forward? And also, is there a community group that might be the go-to point of contact, or is it going to be the council that leads on anything to do with maintenance of the site on an ongoing basis, for example? Thank you.
Okay. There probably isn't as much of a pressing need to set up a community group going forward because the funding has now been found. But I think it would be a good idea to still try to set up a community group just for the ongoing actions around the site, not necessarily to give them any additional responsibility, but just as a user group to link in with the project. Perhaps if there does end up being competitions coming, it would be good to have local involvement in that. We haven't done anything about that as yet. It's obviously just very, very recent that we've had word of this funding, but there were some people that were very keen to be involved. So I would still like to try and engage with these people and get them on board for any future works relating to the site. As regards maintenance, the reason why we're quite firmly behind these pump tracks is because they have very, very limited maintenance involved with them. Obviously, my own team would still continue to cut the grass, empty bins, etc. around the site, but there's very limited maintenance required over and above that for a considerable period of years. It's anticipated. I suppose we might eventually get to the stage where there are potholes in our pump tracks. I don't know going forward, but that would be perceived to be a long, long way ahead. But again, having a group there might help us with that in future. But I'm not anticipating any major costs at all.
Stephen, if you've got a follow-up, just keep coming in.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate Archie's hands up as well. It was just on the funding. So subject to the funding being approved, because if there might be an indication that funding might be available, but there might be a process that, and are we applying as a council? And similarly, the community wind power funds. I think there was a couple of questions around, was that money given to the council to spend on behalf of the community, or is it led by a community group where the council's purchasing on behalf of the community to avoid VAT and things like that? So it's just, do we have the money from community wind power, as in they've given it to us already, or is it sort of, are we sure that we've got the right governance around whether it's a community group led by the community or applied for by the council with community support? Thank you.
The community wind power money is being paid to the community council, and I believe they have already got that. The other grant was from the Hollywood Trust, who we've worked with on a lot of projects, so that is also secured. I think the grant for and Stephen, feel free to pop in at this point if you've got the answer, because I think you're maybe better versed on this than I am for the funding.
Thanks, Nicola. In short, no, I haven't got the answer. It was predicated on a grant basis to secure that funding, and we just need to see what that process is going to be going forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. As regards procurement, it'll be myself under the council who will be procuring the project, and that is to obviously assist with keeping costs to a minimum and also just having oversight of the general project. So that's what we've done in other places. That's what we did at Annan, for example. So we'll continue that on so that we've got some continuity there.
So just to be clear, sorry to just come in, but just to be clear, it's the Community Council holds the funds as being awarded from Community Wind Power and Hollywood Trust, and we're facilitating that through our procurement, which is something we do quite often. The other grant that you mentioned at the start, Nicola, is that the Community Council will get that money potentially from Swiss Strands, or the council will ask for it? So it's just to follow that line to make sure the Community Council is not suddenly surprised that they have to sort of fill out application forms or something like that. Thank you.
No, the council is filling in the forms with Swiss Trans for that. So that'll be the council that will be taking the lead on that particular part.
Perfect. Well, subject to that being approved, and happy to go with option 2, because obviously it is kind of funding dependent. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So just before I bring you in, Archie, I just include all local members. I wonder if, Caroline, it's up to yourself. It might have been covered, but if you've certainly got a chance to come in now if you want for Archie.
Thanks, Chair. No, I'm happy to go with option 2. I think looking through the engagement findings, that's certainly the favoured option. So I'd just like to thank Nicola and Stephen for all their their work on that, because there was loads of different methods of engagement. Although I will be looking at the app that sends an alert after impact, because I have been known to fall off my own bike. So, but happy to go with option 2. Thank you.
No, thanks very much for that. Caroline, Councillor Driver, Archie.
Yeah, thanks. Here's a point of clarification, actually. Is it Swestrans or Sustrans that's providing this funding?
Swestrans, I think it is. Swestrans, yes.
Yeah. Sorry. It was only a point of clarification. I'm quite surprised at that, actually.
Thanks very much for that. I've sometimes seen Sustrans money coming through Swestrans. That's all that maybe adds to the complication. They seem to be the conduit for the council. Right, members, it looks pretty straightforward. If we've considered 2.1, 2.2, the only thing I comment I would have said, and I don't know if Councillor Marshall got a comment, but it looks like a really good project, almost as good as the Eastrix Inclusive Play Park project, almost as good. 2.3.
But not as good as the Gretna one.
The key link to all that is Nicola. So thanks again for this support on this project.
You're very welcome. It's part of my job that I really do enjoy, is all these projects and seeing improvements being made to the local area. And I know that Stephen feels exactly the same. So it's never as much as a burden as it might look, because we are keen to do it. So very happy about it.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you both for that. So 3, I think, so I've been advised it could be a preferred option of words here, or amended. Agree that the council officer can take forward option 2 for the installation of a pump track in Hope Johnston Park. Moffat, in collaboration with Moffat and District Community Council and local volunteers. Thank you for that, Tracy. Members content with that? Yeah. Yes, members, I do have further competent business, but what we're going to do is just take a quick, we'll stop live streaming, and we'll take a quick 5-minute comfort break and come back to that.